Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I feel this is like the way my whole campaign has been in Ohio, that I have been throughout this campaign supported by people in the ISO, working with people in the Green Party, having help from the people in the Ohio Labor Party, working with people in a wide variety of groups on the left as the core of building a political alternative in Ohio. So it's great to be here, and I appreciate the ISO sponsoring this. Great to share the platform here with Rich Whitney. And I had some people here saying, a couple of people ran into me and said, "Man, are you lost? Aren't you running in Ohio?" But I think, it's part of the vision of building a broader movement that you want to be places where, and this is a Midwestern anti-war rally today. It's a Midwestern event, and we are in the heartland, and I want to be here. I'm not that lost. But to show you how lost I am, I actually want to start the talking about something that didn't even happen in the United States. That is, I'd like to talk for a moment about Chile. And the reason I'd like to talk about Chile is to think about why were there so many people in the world captivated by this? And why were there so many people sitting crying in front of their television sets as they watched these guys come out of the ground? My wife was sitting here up in front. I didn't think she was going to stop crying for a couple days. She's an occupational health person, and that's what she cares about most is workers' health. She's dedicated her life to that. And I think it has to do with this. We know what the bosses do. The bosses take people and they send them, the Brits say, down in the pit, right? They send them down in the pit. They send them down in the hole. And they send them down there to go to work. And as we know from what happened with Massey Energy, they send them down there sometimes to die. They send them down there and kill them, like the people that were mentioned earlier on the platform. The bosses, in order to make money, the corporations, in order to make money, will kill people. And they sent these guys down in the hole, and they would have let them die down in the hole in an unsafe mine. But the miners didn't accept that. Those guys down in that mine, I thought it was pretty remarkable. What did they do? They organized themselves. They built a little society down there. They worked. They had to do some work there to maintain that mine. They organized their own recreation. They took care of each other down there. And why were they able to do that so well? Why could they do that? Under the leadership of one guy who was kind of a foreman. In that kind of work, the foreman and the workers are very tight. The foreman isn't much different than the other workers. He's not a boss down there. The guy they called Don, what's his name? There was a very tight group down there, this group of workers. And why could they do it? There were no bosses down there. There were no bosses down there. This was workers taking care of themselves, building a little society under their own control and their own management, making sure that when people sent them down in the pit and were going to leave them there to die, that they were going to come back. And I think that's a great message. That people are being sent today in 1 million workplaces around the world down in the pit to die. Sometimes it's the awful death in a coal mine explosion or a cave-in. Sometimes it's a death that takes place in a factory where somebody is fed into a machine, maybe has a conveyor belt at UPS. Occasionally people fall into those machines. Sometimes it's people who have the monotonous, brain-numbing work of sitting in front of a computer in a cubicle all day, while every keystroke and every word they say is monitored. But people are being, and they don't have the health insurance they need, and they get a carpal tunnel injury, or they get a back injury from that work, whether it's lifting work, or whether it's sitting at the computer work, or whether it's going into the mine, and this constant pressure that people face in our society at work. People who are teachers, who are working in a classroom all day, dealing with kids whose families are suffering terrible social problems. And yet we see this example in these miners of people who say, we're sent into the pit, we won't die. We're not going to face it. We're going to organize. We're going to build our own little society down here, and we're going to come back out. And if you know something of the history of Chile, you know that the Atacama Desert is a place of many fights between workers and the bosses, of massacres, of attacks on workers. And so I think for the people in Chile, it was all that much more moving to think that these workers there had done that. So people sometimes say, well, someone said to me, an old friend I saw at the rally today said, "Well, you're from Ohio. Wow, that's even more conservative than Illinois, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it is." They said, "Well, what do you tell them there?" Well, this is sort of what I tell them. I mean, I'm using the Chile story here, but this is what I try to say in this election campaign. I think Rich said it too. We're talking about the idea of workers' power in the society, that we need to build a society where working class people have power. And that's really the key message here. And I thought that was a key little thing about that Chilean story. Because the Chilean, and one of the reporters said an interesting thing. He said, Pinochet died, his ghost died down in that mine. And I thought that was interesting, because that whole history of repression and violence and so on was turned around in a tiny way by this group of workers who say, no, you can have commonality, you can have solidarity, you can work together.